Okay, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in again. So today I want to take a look at this little gen set. This is a RCA unit powered by a Briggs 23 AFB single-cylinder gasoline engine. I think it's from about 1957. At least that's when the engine serial number dates it to. Now, the story I got with this, first off, let me say that this is a Craigslist find. I spotted it a couple days ago and got in touch with the seller and made the deal to buy it, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. Of course, we haven't gotten into it yet. We don't know what's wrong with it or what it might need. But the story goes, sorry about that. The story goes that the seller, his father, worked as an electrical engineer for RCA back in the time this was built, and he purchased the unit for use around the house. So let's cut and take a closer look at it. Alright, so what really drew me to this thing was the fact that it's tagged RCA. I have never come across another genset sold by RCA. Now I don't know if they built the genset. Obviously the engine is a Briggs and Stratton, but I don't know who built the generator end. That's still a bit of a mystery to me. I don't know if RCA built it themselves or if they just purchased another unit and assembled it on a frame with the engine, or if they just bought a genset and threw their tag on it. I really don't know. I don't recognize this genset. There's a few numbers stamped in here. I don't know if they mean anything to anybody. They really don't mean anything to me. But I know at this time in the 50s there were a lot of companies building small gensets. Winco was a big name, or Windcharger. Onan, of course, was a fairly big name. Fairbanks Morse. Again, I don't know if they built their own gensets, but there were a lot of small Fairbanks gensets out there. What's another name? Pioneer and Pincor. They were building gensets. A lot of different names. So, and then a bunch of like house brand type names for big retailers like Montgomery Ward and Sears, Roebuck. Everybody was selling little gensets back in the 50s. So don't exactly know who built the unit, but I think it's neat having that tag on there, especially being in such nice condition. That was the second thing that really drew me to this. Is apparently this has very few hours on it, and it shows. The unit is in remarkably good condition for its age. The paint is in good shape, just a little bit of surface rust here and there from sitting around. The muffler's in fine shape. Doesn't look like it's done much time at all. I really like the channel iron frame that's kind of bent in that U shape, that horseshoe shape. Paint on the engine's really nice. So yeah, I mean, the seller told me that it may have done 5 or 10 hours since the thing was new. So we're gonna go through it, and hopefully it doesn't need all that much. But with any new genset, you don't want to just throw gas in it and start it up, because you don't know, you might end up doing more damage than you realize. So we'll go through the motions and check all the points out and see if we can get it running. One thing I forgot to mention was the unit came with its original instruction book and operator's manual, or operating instructions for the Briggs engine. So let's take a look at these real quick. They're very delicate. It looks like something's been eaten on that paper, but it's really a great thing to get original literature with the unit. So you've got some warranty information or parts and service. I imagine you're supposed to fill out your genset information there, so it's always handy. But you can see how rough the paper is. But it's a nice manual. Covers all the different models, or many of the different models, and basics for installation and operation. There's one nice diagram in here. Here it is. Shows a recommended installation for the unit for permanent installation. This is neat because Onan manuals of the same era were the same way, and if I didn't know better, I'd say the same guy the same artist made these sketches. It's really neat. Information for making a concrete slab for it. Exhaust surrounding. Wire sizes per run of cable. Or wire sizes per length. How to make up your connections. Sorry about that. We get a lot of truck traffic here during the day. So there's your basic transfer switch. That looks super safe. People were a bit more wise back then, I guess. Maintenance and service. This book is very delicate. So, and there's a parts list for the gen set, the actual generator end, which is nice. Got a cutaway there and all your part numbers. Doesn't really indicate who built the gen set. I imagine you were supposed to order the parts from RCA, but really great to have this book. Pretty nice. So that's the RCA booklet, and then we've got basic operating instructions for the Briggs engine. It goes into maintenance and all the things you need to do to keep a unit like this running, part numbers and everything. And again, the book is very delicate, so I'm trying not to handle it too roughly. Alright, well, let's set them aside and actually get to work. Alright, well, let's start taking a look at it. And I'm really curious to start taking the generator end apart. I want to know what's on this connection box up here and what the rear end of the gen set looks like. I know the unit turns, it's not locked up. I rotated it a little bit by hand. So we'll take a look at the gen, then we'll proceed to look at the engine. Alright, well, not much to see in the connections box here. Looks like we got a relay and a resistor. And this large lead, A2, is not terminated anywhere. F11. Got a little tape ball here. I don't know what that's about. So, I noticed earlier that we've got a secondary lead coming from the points box, and that runs up to this little tape ball, which appears to land on the coil of this relay. It's a normally closed contact relay. The contacts for the relay, you know what this is? It's got to be flicker points. This has to be the RCA version of flicker points. Let's take this points box off and see if there's anything interesting in there. Okay, nothing terribly interesting under the points cover. Got our main wire here. This is the primary winding coming from the ignition coil. Runs right up to the insulated point like you would expect. And then we've got the secondary wire here, which is shielded, which is interesting. Just for radio noise suppression. That also goes to the insulated point. And we've got our condenser, and the points look like they're in fantastic shape. That condenser, not so much though. Definitely looks like that's been leaking, huh? So that's probably gonna have to be replaced. No big deal. That's an interesting setup. I've never seen the ignition points utilized as the flicker points. That's interesting. Let me come around here. And yeah, that's really interesting. So the coil of this relay is connected parallel with the points. You can see down there. Maybe you can't, but I can. And then the other side of the coil just goes right to ground. That's interesting. The primary side of the ignition coil must build up enough voltage to still allow the engine to have a decent spark, even with this leakage to ground, essentially. I'll have to measure the resistance of that coil. I'm curious now. Potter and Brumfield, but I can't see what the coil voltage rating is. And then you got your field coming out. F11 they call that, going to one end of the resistor. The other end of the resistor is going to ground, just through this stud here that holds the resistor in place. That's ground. And then it also goes to the coil. So when the engine's on a power stroke, that would make sense. So when the engine fires and is on a power stroke, the relay would be picked up, or the points would be held open, so that would put the flicker resistor in series with the field, which would lower the output voltage. And then when the engine is not on a power stroke, the relay would be closed and you would have full field right to ground. So pretty interesting. And this here, A2, I'll bet you that goes to the positive brush ring for the armature. So that must be for your optional electric start, which they didn't get on this one. So let's take this cover off. Oh. Huh. Well, I wasn't expecting that. Okay. Well. Make sure there's nobody living in there. Apparently I'm not the only one who liked this generator. Oh man. Ooh. Let's get you a closer look at that. That's a hell of a nest. Wow. Yeah, they really like this generator. Sheesh. Man, I should go put a mask on or something before I start playing with this stuff. Alright, let's see how we're looking in here. Let's see if we've got any damage. Well, I see right off the bat, they nibbled right through the pigtail for that brush. Just clear on through it. And they did the same thing down here. This is one of the armature brushes, one of the DC brushes. It's a 2-wire brush, but they nibbled clean through it. Clean through one of the leads. Luckily they were kind enough to leave enough of a tail on the brush that I can solder a wire onto that. But let's see. Let me shift my hand here. And coils themselves look fine. A little bit of staining there. That's to be expected. Really doesn't look too bad in there at all. Couple of spots of corrosion on the rings there, not a problem. Clean that up. Otherwise, not looking too bad. Alright, well, let's leave that for now and take a look at the engine. Well, since we found that pretty decent sized mouse nest in the generator end, the first order of business here is going to be pulling the blower housing off the engine and make sure that there's not a mouse nest up in this area blocking the cylinder head and the cylinder cooling fins. So it looks like they must have entered the generator end from one of these side air intakes. They would pretty much have a straight run from there if they came up between the field coils. So, oh well. Let's go ahead and pull that shroud off. look at that. There's still fresh, clean oil in that bowl. How about that? Oh, no mouse nest. That's a good sign. Nice and clean. Let's take a look in there. Yeah? It's like a pretty fresh engine. Alright, let's pop that spark plug out and put a little bit of oil down the cylinder before we turn it over. Alright, well, let's take a look at that. That looks like a lightly used Champion J8 plug. See a little bit of soot down around the bottom. Must have been running a little bit rich. But wow, that's a fantastic original plug. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but this whole assembly here, this is this cap and the braiding, the wire braiding on the ignition, the spark plug wire. That's all for radio interference suppression. So the high voltage pulse from the magneto actually sends out electromagnetic energy, and that can interfere with certain devices, especially older devices that this thing would have powered it back in its day. So that's just a means to help control noise on the line. You would hear a crackle in your radio or on your television if this thing was running nearby with no suppression like this. So, alright, let's put a little bit of oil down that cylinder. And we might as well check and see if we have spark while we're at it. Yeah, looks like we have spark. Let's see here. Yeah, you might not be able to see it, but I can. So we got spark, turns over. Didn't check compression though. I imagine it's got fair compression. We'll give it the old quick test here. Oh yeah, look at that. Can you see what I'm doing here? This is your old quick small engine compression test. Put your thumb over the spark plug hole, give the flywheel a spin. If it has a nice sharp bounce back, that's usually enough to run it. Okay, where were we? So the engine's lubed up, it's all reassembled. Put the points cover back on, we have spark. I don't think I'm going to do anything else to the engine itself. I think we're just going to put gas in it at this point. I'm not going to bother taking the carburetor apart now. I'm going to hope that it's clean. I see we got it's been apart before. Looks like we got a homemade gasket here. No big deal. But yeah, I'm curious to see if it'll run. So, but before we do that, got to fix these brushes here. So that's the one that, well, the two that the mice nibbled in half there. All the rest of the brushes are clean, they're free in their holders, and I went ahead and I buffed the slip rings and the commutator. So let's go ahead and fix them brushes. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to run at this point. I got the tank full of fuel and the fuel valve turned on. And I've had that on for a little while now just to see if we have any fuel leaks. Of course, we got a little bit of seepage around that homemade gasket, but that's not the end of the world. Good thing is we're not flooding. We're not just dumping fuel out of the carb. So these are kind of known to do that, these flow jet carbs. So got the brushes reinstalled. Here, got my repaired brush lead there, and one down there. I've moved into the garage here just because it's brutally hot in the sun. So I think we're about ready to start. Now the one thing I didn't mention yet in this video is the oil in the crankcase. Now the oil in the crankcase looks like the oil that was in the filter. Let me get a little screwdriver here. Just immaculately clean. See that? It's thin, but it doesn't smell like gasoline. It doesn't smell like fuel. Now, the engine specifies a 20 weight oil, which I don't have any of, and I've never actually put 20 weight oil in anything. But that's what the engine calls for, so I'm going to assume that's 20 weight oil. That's why it looks thin to me compared to 30 weight. So we're going to leave that in there initially. You know, I scraped the screwdriver along the bottom and I didn't see any sludge in there. So we're going to run the engine, get it warmed up, and depending on how it runs, then we'll drain the oil and put some fresh stuff in there. So, right, fuel's on. We'll put you on the stand here and we'll get it started up, hopefully. I already got the load bank and everything connected, so depending on how it runs, we can put some load on it. And one thing I'm going to do is, like I say in all of my generator videos, I'm going to turn the throttle down a little bit, the governor, because you never know, in the past somebody could have really revved this thing up too high. So we're going to start safe. Okay. Choke on. Okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah. This is the rope that came with the thing. So I guess rope from 1957 can't quite hold up anymore. Okay, well, stand by. Alright, well, here's another piece of rope. This one looks equally as old, but give that a try. fixed. Fix all right. Nothing. Turn the choke off. Hey, it's running. Wow, and it sounds good. The choke's all the way off. Power. And it's actually running right about where it's supposed to be. I can't believe it. Yeah. 62 hertz, 61.5, 62 no load. And it's not half bad. Voltage is a bit high, but that'll come down with the load on it. I can't believe it's running so nice. No current. Wow. Hang on a second, I want to try something. Let's give the old stroboscope a try. I don't know if it's going to work, or if the flashing, pulsing light is going to mess with the camera, like with the frame rate. So let's see here. Try to zoom you in. Let's see if we can get a shot of the armature while it's running. Oh yeah, I can kind of see it. You see it there? Just be goofing around. I don't get to use the stroboscope very much, but there's times where it does come in handy. warm it up a little bit. Get a little bit of heat in that oil. Not missing a beat though. Now she's working a little bit. Wow, that thing runs nice. Let's put 1500 on it. Yeah, the voltage is coming down to a more acceptable level. And that frequency is staying rock solid. I'm surprised the governor is so responsible on this thing. amps. You know what? I don't want to run it too long with load without having this shroud on the back end, because that's what's going to draw cooling air through the generator. So you know what? Let's cut that load off. Cut that load off, and we'll give her a second to run. And I'm going to pop this shroud on, and we'll come back. Alright, well, she's had plenty of time to warm up. Still running really well. Let's see here. Voltage is alright. Frequency's a little high. Well, you know what? Let's put some load on it. Let's get it to about 50% load, and we'll check that frequency again and see where it sits. So full load is 21.7 amps. So let's hit 10 or 11 amps and see where our frequency is. Is 11.1, 11 amps. Let's see where the frequency's at. Whoa, still really high. Let's back that down a hair. Wow, that governor is very responsive. Let's put a little bit more onto it. That's 1500 watts, 12 point something amps, 12.6. Wow. Let's put it 2000 watts. .5 amps, 61.8 hertz, 121 volts. Seems pretty happy. So, full load should be just under 2500 watts. We're at 2000 watts right now. Let's step her right up to 2,500. Oh, we're almost there. Oh, there you go. That's full load right there. Full load, 116 volts, 60 hertz. There you go, 21.8. Man, listen to that thing bark. Governor sounds a little bit bouncy when you drop a big load off of it. Yeah, I'll say it's a bit bouncy. Let's let her cool down for a while with no load. Not bad for a, what is it, 63-year-old generator? Not bad. Well, thank you very much for watching.